for this lecture. And I'm very happy to have Professor Dr. Raymond Duraiswami.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah. Raymond Duraiswami has been with us for quite some time. I think in 2014-15, he delivered a lecture on the basalt uh, Deccan traps, right?
Yes, from
For
Mumbai.
us,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was very surprised very pleasantly surprised at your knowledge of the groundwater. And then I
Yes,
came to know you were working with the groundwater project, Groundwater Surveys and Development Agency,
yes, ma'am.
for 9 years. Okay, so Professor Duraiswamy is now teaching as an assistant professor, professor of Department of Geology in University of Pune, which is now known as Savitribai Phule University. And well, he has done his, right now he is also, well, head of the Department of Geology in
No,
this
no, just
university,
holding the charge, ma'am.
just
Yeah.
holding the charge, yes, but then that makes him very busy, and still he has taken out time to give us this lecture.
No,
But
no.
I felt that because of this Uttarakhand and what the grim photographs that we are seeing, everybody is interested in knowing what's happening. Year after year, the same things happen at Himachal and Uttarakhand, and why it is happening. Is it only the climate change impact? Is it the the human anthropogenic effect, or what is it? What is happening with the geology of Himalayas? So, who better than Dr. Duraiswamy to explain us all that? He has done his doctoral work on the mantle xenoliths in alkaline plugs of Kachchh, Gujarat. To know what it means, you will have to learn more geology. And Professor Duraiswamy is going to be with us for another course very soon. Some of you must have done his course in Geology of India some 5-6 months ago now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, but now he is going to give us a fresh course on mineralogy, A to Z of rocks and minerals. So I'm really very happy that he is here with us on to speak on this. He has worked in diverse terrains such as the higher Himalayas of Ladakh and Karakoram and Sikkim and Andaman Islands also, Thar does desert also. He was in Gujarat for quite some period of time for his doctoral work, the salt flats of Kutch also. And well, he has seen a lot of geology all over the world. Malawi, Iran, Norway, Sweden, Georgia, France, Germany, Netherlands. Oh my God! And I'm sure, I mean,
There's nothing like home, ma'am. Yeah.
of course, but geology, this is
Yeah.
our Earth is our home right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And for a geologist, I think all parts of Earth are fascinating, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So Dr. Duraiswamy has written 5 books and has presented some 73 plus papers so far in various international forums. He is also a fellow and life member of Geological Society of India, Bangalore, Indian Science Congress Association, Kolkata, Gondwana Geological Society, Nagpur, and also the Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, Dehradun. He's also a member of Indian Society of Geometrics. So, and now he is a member of Instructor also. Should I say that?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes,
India
definitely.
Study Center
Mhm.
prides itself, having Dr. Duraiswamy with us to teach geology to our students. And today, this is a free event, but this is a precursor of what you will be getting interested into geology, knowledge of geology. So, for a deep plunge, you will have to wait. But today, there is something which you should know about the latest happenings in Himalayas. Dr. Raymond Duraiswamy, for you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir.
ma'am.
Thank you for
Thank you.
being with us.
Thank you for such wonderful words. And yes, that's a long introduction. Ma'am has lavishly praised me. I am just a foot soldier. I love the sunshine, and
You are a great teacher.
no, ma'am, it's a blessing of so many people, right? And your encouragement. I have learned so many things from institution and from you. So it is important for us to hold hands and share knowledge, and this is part of that. When I was in GSDA, for example, the Groundwater Survey and Development Agency, it consists of some 300 odd geologists, geochemists, geophysicists, and we tackle the groundwater based water supply to rural Maharashtra, and one of a kind organization in Maharashtra. It's very it's a happening place, and people do not die of thirst because of this institution. Um, so there I learned that unless we disseminate and we share and we hold hands amongst communities, we and amongst the scientists, we will never be able to make the difference that can make our country forge as one of the developed countries. So that is very important, and therefore I came back to teaching, and I love teaching. And so this is all about my wanderlust, and I thank Madam for coaxing me to do this, although I was not very sure that I should do this. But yes, I am trained at NRSA, I am trained at IRS Dehradun, and I have wandered through the Himalayas, and so I just put forth my old photographs and things to give you a glimpse of what the Himalayas are and about what mass movements, as we call it in geology. It's a group name, mass wasting, as we call it. It's a normal process in on planets, be it on the moon or be it on Mars. Mass wasting is one of the fundamental ways by which the planets reduce their elevations. Okay, and dynamic planets such as the Earth do this much more vigorously. The only problem comes when humans either interfere or get affected by these mass movements. Right, so there is a lot of mass wasting phenomenon both on Mars, Venus, on other planets, including the moon. So this is an insight to that aspect. So I will go slow, try to keep it very basic. I was told by Madam that there were some geology students out over here, so we can raise the level of the lecture as and when it is required. Yeah, so this is the theme that we evolved over the days, and what a befitting photograph that Madam used for the theme. Okay, it shows a beautiful, and that's the problem with geologists. For them, disasters are beautiful. Okay, so they are odd men out in society. When people are dying, we guys are saying beautiful, right? So this is a disaster that was happening, is happening, and will happen in the future, and it affects our psyche. Number one, because we see it happening live on television. It is beamed throughout the day and night, and then we have a lot of charcha sastra on this, a lot of debates, and then nothing happens, right? So we'll come back to this. You can see that there is a flood, which is a disaster, uh, and you can see this was the dam site at Tapovan. Plus you can see actually the scar of an unborn landslide over there, okay, in the form of this curvature on that hill slope. So it's just a beautiful image to depict disasters on the front page, and I thought I will use what Madam um, or some of you put on this flyer. Okay, so we will understand what is the problem over here. But before that, we should set the agenda and talk about what is mass wasting. Now gravity, for example, and gravity is a universal phenomenon, right? It occurs on all planets, on the stars, and everywhere. Gravity is such a big force that it took a genius like Newton to disappear the laws. Okay, and so gravity is the prime mover for all mass wasting. Now what is mass wasting? Mass wasting is basically movement of geological material, and more so after humans came, civil structures. So movement of geological material along with civil structures under the effects of gravity. Some of them are depicted over here. are known as mass wasting, right? So basically the idea is that whenever you uplift something on the earth, then nature or the forces of nature tend to cut it down, and therefore gravity is one of the greatest forces of getting a penny plane surface on planetary systems. So collectively geologists call all the phenomenons, landslide is sort of a slang, or is in vogue for the process of mass wasting, a group name. So, what are mass wastings, and what are the fundamentals related to mass wasting? This is a theoretical part of it. I thought I'll explain so that you will appreciate the photos and understand the nature of the dynamics of landslides in the Himalayas. So, the idea is very simple. There are two factors or three factors. One is the material itself, that means the rock material that nature has created. That itself is an inherent problem. Okay, and we will dedicate a slide to that when it comes. But the two factors that affect mass wasting processes on Earth per se is the the angle of repose, of course, and of course the shearing stress on that slope. So the idea is, steeper the slope, greater is the probability of mass wasting. Okay, so there are two, like it is depicted in the cartoon down there. For shear stress, you can see shear stress balanced by friction. Okay, and of course a body's center of gravity determines whether it will move or not move. Okay, so the stability of the slope is just like what we do in case of angle of banking in road curvatures, right? So steeper the slope, greater is the chances of shear stress dominating and dislodging earth material. And the second is called the angle of repose, depicted on the right. You can see that the angle of repose is the angle created by a deposit or by loose rock to its normal. Okay, so that is the angle of repose. That means steeper the angle of repose, steeper the chances or greater the chances of mass wasting, right? But there is a catch 20 situation over that. It is dependent upon the nature of the material that has accumulated. So it becomes, in terms of size, if the material itself is fine grained, then even it will have a less angle of repose, right? If a material is coarse grained, it will have a large angle of repose. And of course then what happens is the nature of the material itself. If there are boulders, or if you try to make a triangle of marbles, it will never stay in place. Why? Because it is smooth, its shearing stress is great at the surface, and of course they are spherical, and therefore it will just fall down, right? But if you have material like what we do in aggregates, we have large size, we have angular size, then the materials will lock into each other and they will hold together. So it is very important to understand that mass wasting is a universal phenomenon. You cannot control it. Gravity is a great leveler. It always will try to level you down. It cuts you down. Okay, and therefore we as humans or as material need to be grounded, very much grounded to what we and where we belong. So that's the foundation basically of landslide or mass wasting and mechanics. So there are of course other factors related to it, including fluid mechanics and the nature and the porosity of these materials. But these are the general factors that we should here understand before we go on to see photographs of landslides. So this is what you're going to see: the nature of the material, the angle, and the kind of the deposit. Now, if you reverse engineer, if you see the deposit or if you see a landslide scar, then you can disappear all these factors that could have taken place. That is what geologists do. They are like detectives. After the landslides happen, then they make an inspection and then they ascertain the cause of this thing. And now we are into numeric modeling. Uh, at IITs or at the Earthquake Research Institute in Roorkee, or so there are many institutions working on different aspects of landslides. Okay, and the nodal agency, of course, is Geological Survey of India. So they are meticulously documenting and um, studying landslides, but the dissemination is a problem, and that is where they will probably have to look to educate people more about landslides. Okay, and then only people will, they are the eyes and ears of the nation. Therefore, these common people, if they are made to or taught how to make an observation on a landslide, many of the disasters can be averted. Okay, as we will see through this, and it's not space science, it's very simple. Okay, so we will also see how to detect whether a landslide is or whether an area is susceptible to landslides. Okay, I am sure that after this lecture you will also be in a position to do the same, right? Okay. Coming back to the angle of repose, these are examples I took from the internet, of course. So in volcanoes you find steep slope greater than 45. Why? Because the material is angular. They are blocks and bombs and ash. They are of various shapes and size, so they interlock into each other, and you get steep slopes like this. Okay, but when the material is like sand, as you can see on the right side, the sand dune, right? The material is uniform, they are all quartz grains, they are all spherical. Okay, wind-borne sand is always spherical because of attrition, right? And because of that, if you go to 30 degrees, nature does not wait for the resultant. Okay, the resultant by mathematics is 45 degrees, but slope failure in nature can happen from 28 to 30 degrees. The stress is released. So nature is very clever, doesn't wait for the mathematical equation of 45. Okay, it will simply release it by 28. Okay, and there are other factors that perpetuate that trigger mechanism, right? So the other fundamentals that we need to know, especially in the Himalayas, is glacial geomorphology and what are their products, because that was involved in the Tapovan disaster that we will see at the end of this lecture. So this is known to many geologists, but not known in the context of landslides. So a student of geology must collect all the fundamentals and put them together to have remedial and applicative measures. So this is what glaciers look like. In the higher Himalayas, we have glacier. Please remember that the Himalayas are called the third pole in terms of freshwater budget, okay, or accumulation of snow. So you have basically frost actions, and you must know that the Himalayas are rising by 14 centimeters to 28 centimeters per year. And as they rise, they are cut down by isostasy, or they are cut down by the agents of weathering, ice being the most prominent in the higher Himalayas. Okay, this is true for Alps, and this is true for Rockies and Andes also, right? So as they rise, as continents rise, they are, because they can rise because they are on a plastic mantle, right? They are on a deforming mantle, so the crust is rigid, so it can rise. So as the crust rises, the agents of denuation, be it river, ice, wind, they tend to cut down the landform, and therefore you have, because of frost action, you have huge mountains of varied rock types that are broken down. Okay, and after the snow falls, then they accumulate and they form rivers of ice called glaciers, right? So you can see here snow and firm, and there is a firm line. Okay, and because of the frost action you get jagged peaks. Okay, and of course that jagged peak, because of the frost action, all of that rock then falls onto the ice and is transported downstream, right? So this ice is called then as moraine. They are floating on the surface of the ice, right? And you have different types of moraine, for example. So you can see this one cirque basin over here. okay, which is a circular basin that forms because of frost action and undercutting of the rocks, right? Just like a watershed in fluvial geomorphology, an ice watershed is called as a cirque, and the ice accumulates over there. And so all of the rock that is broken because of the wedging and the frost action, you get triangular faceting and peaks, and all of the material falls onto the ice and is carried downstream. So you have large chunks or large boulders that are piggybacked on the ice as they come down. And just because of the flow, the boulders are either carried in the middle of the, so you can have terminal moraines, for example, or lateral moraines as they are called over here, from derived from the hillocks. So they are towards the sides of the glacier, both the sides of the glacier. And when two glacier streams meet, then they are converted, the lateral moraine is converted to a medial moraine. That is where the rocks are piggybacked on the ice. Okay. And what happens is that they are taken forward, and when they are either dropped in the form of terminal moraines, or they are dropped at the foot of the glacier. Okay. And we know that the Himalayas or any mountain system with the global warming scenario, the ice or the glaciers are retreating, and as they retreat they will leave series of terminal moraine. Okay. So this is very very coarse, huge blocks, such as huge building size blocks can be also carried by the ice. Okay. So you have medial moraines, lateral moraines, and series of terminal moraines at the snout of glaciers, right? Now there is another thing that happens, is that ice is sliding on the rock, and whatever happens is that this ice is always crackling. So the lateral moraine and terminal moraine, medial moraines, the blocks could go down to the base of the ice. So in the cross section you can see that the ice scratches, that is, it has an abrasive action on the rock, on the hill slope. It also plucks, okay, the rocks. So any protrusion on the base of the ice is plucked, and it is also ground, just like silbatta pe hum log grind karte hain. So below that rock, you find below the ice there is a grinding machine that is going on, and that grinding is a rock, it's a rock flour, like just like very fine flour that we use to make dough for our chapatis. That sort of grain size it becomes, because it is completely pulverized and powdered. Okay. And that, even when the ice melts, is deposit in the form of till. Okay. So it is very very fine grained sediment, but it is not a product of weathering, it is a product of glaciation, it is a product of apparition. So the ice simply crushes the rock into a very fine. So at the snout of glaciers you find till, and the term that we use is stillite. Okay. Or we find moraines, that is a geomorphic term. The geologists call these deposits as as dimictite. Okay. As dimictite. So you have till and dimictite at the terminal uh, parts of snouts, and these keep accumulating year after year, as is shown in the small uh, figure up there. The red lines are indication of where the tillite and the, so a series of this over centuries, as the ice is melting in 10 or 15 years in the Himalayas, we are seeing that there are 6 or 7 what you call moraines, levels of moraines because of the ice melt. And those are really sitting ducks when it rains. Okay, so this is the problem. Now we know what has happened, that India has traveled from the greater Gondwana continent towards the north, and all of the ocean between Tibet and India is then shortened and folded into the Himalayas, right? So we generally call the Himalayas as fold mountains, right? So this is a map of the Himalayas, and you can see various zone. Now this is exactly what happens. Like, so if my right hand is Tibet and my left hand is India, and India is slamming into Tibet, this is what happens. You can see. Okay, so this is what happens. It creates a root zone. But if the slamming is rapid, this is what happens. It starts folding up. Okay, and you can see what has happening to this. So if I continuously close, we are getting these thrust planes. So before we go into it, for the students of geology, we can see over here very clearly, we have a map of the Himalayas, and forget the Parmis and the Karakoram, they are part of the Tibetan plateau out there, right? But we start from, say, from Delhi, okay, which is the Indo-Gangetic plain, not shown over here, of course. And you can see that the first line, especially onto the left of your image, the MFT, okay, is the main frontal thrust. Okay, so if you go, for example, from Chandigarh to Simla, you cross the main frontal thrust. If you go from Roorkee to Dehradun, right? So Roorkee is in the Indo-Gangetic plain, and as the small hills come up, you can see the Shivalik hill ranges, which are famous for so many fossils, archaeological finds. Okay, they are what separates the Indian continent, that is, I'm saying the Indo-Gangetic plains, from the Himalayas. So the first thrust that you see that we generated like this, okay, this is a thrust. Okay, so as the word literally means, so it is basically, before it gets folded, it is dragged up like this. Okay, hope you can see it. Okay, so this is the thrust, and that is depicted by that line. Okay, and if you notice closely, there is triangles on that line indicating the direction. The apice of that triangle indicates the movement of the thrust, right? So that is the thrust plane, and that's the movement. The first one is called the main frontal thrust. Okay, so as you go from Dehradun to Mussoorie, you cross the first thrust, and a thrust is basically a planar surface where rocks are slammed upon the others. I will show you something else. So the first one is called the main frontal thrust, and then you have the Shivalik sediments. Okay, so the coarse stippling on that map is the Shivalik sediments. If you go up onto the left side of this image, you will go to the MBT, that stands for main boundary thrust. So you have another thrust. So if I have packets like this of sediments, okay, and if this is Tibet, then I will start thrusting my sheets like this. Okay, so this is what happens. So the Himalayas is all about thrusting and folding, right? I will show you how a thrust looks. So the main boundary thrust is also known as the main boundary fault, is another important thrust higher up in the Himalayas, right? If you go from, say, if you go to Nainital, for example, that is the level where the main boundary thrust will be. Okay, and then you will have the MCT, that is the main crystalline thrust. Okay, so between the main frontal thrust and the main boundary fault, all of this is sediments, right? So if you go to the Kangra Valley, for example, the Kangra Valley railway heritage is in the Shivaliks. Okay, they are all conglomerates and boulders, huge boulders. They are all sedimentary. Okay, so there is a possibility of landslide happening because the material itself is bouldery. So the main boundary fault, then hard rock starts coming into the play. So the Himalaya, then you get shales and phyllite, which are slightly metamorphosed rocks. Okay, the phyllites, the slates, they start coming in. Okay, and in the main crystalline thrust, so if you go to Dalhousie, or if you go to where the Dalai Lama lives, basically. So in the background, you can see, I'll get that. There you will see crystalline. That means the gneisses and the granites will come into the play. So that is the main crystalline thrust. And of course, lastly, you have It's not a thrust, as you can see, IZS. So that is stands for the Indus Yarlung in Tibet, Yarlung River in Tibet. So Indus Sangpo Suture Zone. We call it Indus Sangpo Suture Zone. The Chinese call it the Indus Yarlung Suture Zone. So that is basically where the Indus River flows. Okay, around that NP, which is Nanga Parbat, right? And DR is Dras, so that is Ladakh, right? So the Indus River flows through this suture. So it's that separates. So these are the places where there is a possibility, because they are weak zones, they are tectonic zones in the Himalayas, where most of the landslides or the earthquakes occur, because they are zones of weakness in the crust. And please remember that this is the thickest part of crust in the world. It ranges from 40 kilometers to 70 kilometers. So the crust is thickest in the Himalayas. Okay, nowhere on the earth you find such thick crust except in Antarctica, probably. Okay, there are thick crust in Greenland, for example, but 70, 120. So the keel, that is the root of the Himalayas, I remember I showed you this route of the Himalayas is up to 140 kilometers. Okay, so these are very, very deep seated structures. These are very, very regional structures. You can see Bhutan, Sikkim, Kathmandu, okay, Kumaon, right up to Srinagar basin and beyond into Pakistan. You find that these structures prevail, and they are the ones that dominate the earthquake and landslide scenes in the Himalayas. So that is the background, and we can go fast now. So that's what you can see. Okay, you will see a series of hill ranges starting from the Shivalik. If you fly, for example, if you fly Delhi Leh, then you go through all of that. You can see Simla, then of course you can see Manali. Okay, that's where the central crystallines is. Okay, so many of you have gone through these places for tourist interest, but the geological significance is very much enshrined in these tourist places, right? So you find that there are a series of hill ranges, Dhaulagiri and other hill ranges. They are geographic names to it, but they form a series of hills. Okay, and please remember that monsoon does not reach Ladakh in majority of the cases. The Himalayas are so high; they are literally a wall. Okay, and actually several walls, okay, of hill ranges, and separated by these boundary thrust. Okay, and that is the reason why they become susceptible, so susceptible to landslides, to earthquakes and other disasters. Okay, especially now we are seeing that the Himalayas are thawing, they are melting, and we will find floods and events related to such melting. And of course we know, because the climate is changing on the globe, if there is increase in the heat by 1.5 or 2 degrees, then you find that the latitudinal shifts are there, and therefore we will find that monsoon will start and begin to reach higher parts of Himalayas where it was not prevalent, okay, including Ladakh. Okay, uh, so we are coming to the rocks now. Let us look at the rocks. Okay, so these are inherent properties that are exploited by disasters. So shales are, so you know mud, right? When it rains, you get a puddle of mud, and it is very soft sediment. It's um, just like the multani mitti that you use, okay, which is kaolinite. It's a clay you apply as a face pack, so it's that smooth and that fine. Okay, when the rock forms, they form in layers or laminations. Okay, when it is consolidated, that rock is called as a shale. You have different varieties of shale. Okay, ferruginous, carbonaceous, depending upon what is the constituents, right? But shales are essentially laminated. That means they are having a facility, right? And when they get metamorphosed, they are either converted to phyllite or or slate. Okay, and please remember, in the Himalayas, um, we have the Dogra slate. Most of these slates are flaggy, just as shown in the pictures. The pictures are taken from the internet, of course, but these are used in the roofs by the locals. So any disaster is actually, people are sleeping below the roof of blades. That is what I call them. Okay, so an earthquake or a disaster, landslide, is sure to kill more people because we have slates on the roofs. Okay, Chamba, you name the valley, and the slates are used on the roof of the, even in Kathmandu, for example. That is the case. Okay, it's a ticking bomb. Okay, Latur people died because basalt was kept on the tin of roofs, and when the earthquake happened, the boulders fell in the house and killed many people. So it was not actually the earthquake intensity that killed more people, it was what we do with our civil structures traditionally or non-traditionally. So limestones, you can have thin bedded limestones and you can have thickly bedded limestones, and look at the nature of the blocks that are formed. Okay, so limestone has this inherent, quartzites and limestones have this inherent properties to make large blocks. Okay, and all of them partake in the Himalayas. This is the dominant lithology in the Himalayas. Okay, besides the cobbles and the conglomerates in the Kangra Valley. Okay, this is the dominant, I'm sorry, this is the dominant lithology that comes into the play. So in case of landslide, by looking at the geology, you will understand what is the effect, whether you will get fine sediments or whether you will get coarse sediments or you will get large blocks. The first order determination is the rock type, right? Okay, so in Himalayas, most of the sediments were deposited in the Tethyan Sea as horizontal deposits. Okay, thick, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers thick sediments that were horizontal. But because of India Asia collision, we find that the rocks have been thrusted and they start dipping. The moment you create these dips from a horizontal position, you are inducing slippage. Okay, so these will be stacked, will be stable. The moment you start tilting them, that's what happens, they will start slipping. Okay, and so this is the problem with majority of the parts of so they get thrust and now they are susceptible to mass movement, much more susceptible. So if you have a competent bed and an incompetent bed, that means if you have a quartzite or a limestone alternating with a shale or a phyllite, then you are a disaster, because the different rock types behave differently to slope and to trigger mechanism, and the Himalayas is everything put together. Okay, and that's why we are in trouble. Okay, so you add to it the thrust, and thrust, I hope you understand that you can have two types of movements. One is basically under gravity, one block goes down. So whenever this movement is there, it is a gravity fault. When the movement is the other way around, then it is called a thrust. So if you look at the first diagram or look at the picture, here you can see thinly bedded phyllite. Okay, it was shale. This is in the in the Paonta Sahib area of Himachal Pradesh. This photograph is from the photograph in the background, and the arrow is showing how the horizontal beds are dipping and getting thrusted. Okay, so the arrow is pointing to the direction of the hanging wall over the footwall. So you can see that the shale is getting crushed along the thrust plane, and it is creating some place where water can then accumulate and cause slippage. Okay, and in the block diagram just above it, in the first left hand corner, you can see if there is a thrust which is onto the right side, Okay, so the footwall block remains in place, but what happens to the hanging wall? The hanging wall rises up, and you can notice where it is written strike, there you can notice that the wall is overhanging. The moment there is a hanging wall, gravity takes over and wants to bring it down. Right, on the right side I am showing you a thrust. Okay, you can see basically that the rock is overhanging. That should be around 20 meters in height. Okay, because I have cropped that photo. The road and the person standing there is not visible in the photo on the right. So that's around 20 meters high, right? And it's a overhang. So you can see that thrusting has caused an overhang, and gravity would bring it down. That would be disastrous for the road that is just below it, right? So this is the structure. So the first thing is the rock, because it produces the material for landslide depending upon its inherent property. So you will have large blocks, or you will have fine material, or you will simply have clay and mud, and that determines what is the type of landslide or mass moon. The second thing is the structure of the rocks. Okay, if it is gravity fault, then the disaster is very less. But if it is thrusting, then because gravity is the greatest leveler, it brings people down, it brings material down. Okay, and people who are staying below that are susceptible to disasters. Okay, and people in India are everywhere, right? Everywhere in the Himalayas there are people, absolute beautiful people, very simpletons. Okay, okay. So this is an example from Dras in Ladakh. You can see this from the town itself, from behind the masjid in Dras. This is a beautiful thrust sheet. Okay, so you can see what has happened, that the thrusting is one above the other. So there are rocks and there are thrusts like this. So if any snow or anything, you can see the thrust plains, okay, of the thick bedded. So it is basically sediments that were deposited about 2 to 3 kilometers in the sea are now above 4,000 meters thrusted on the Himalayas, right? And they are semi-consolidated to consolidated. They are they have great angles of repose, if you can remember what I said there, and therefore they become susceptible to mass movements. Okay, so this area would be definitely susceptible to accumulation of snow, and of course first thing will be avalanches. Okay, and second things will be mass movement, mass wasting phenomenon. So you will get different varieties of landslides in this thrust, and the Himalayas for most of the part is thrust mountain. Okay, only in the lower Himalayas you get folds like this, right, where the sediments are. Then this is again from Ladakh. This is from, so I have taken you to Ladakh quietly, and I'm showing you that this is a large fold. uh, this is around 8 kilometers wide, okay, or at least 6 kilometers wide. Okay, so that's the huge nature. You can see that the rocks are bended, okay, and there are secondary folds in the core of the folds. But what is important is that it is being thrusted and by this mechanism. Okay, so they are forming anticline. So here you can see that it is an inclined anticline. So in the inset we have a symmetrical anticline followed by an asymmetrical anticline fold. Okay, so that's what you're seeing at an angle, right? And then it will go on to become a recumbent fold, okay, if the thrusting goes on. Okay, and this is in Spongtang, which is probably the roof of the Himalayas. Okay, this is on the road to Spongtang. This should be around 4,000 odd meters, or 4,500 meters at least. What is important is all those beds are folded. You can see chevron folds in the center of the photo, chevron V-shaped folds, right? Very symmetric. They are tight over there, and the remaining sediment is overarching, right? But what is important is, look what is the debris created. Okay, so the debris is fine grained because they are shales and sandstones, and they are now accumulated as coalescing fans at the base of this fold. Okay, so in that valley, if you have excessive rainfall, boom, that all those sediments are going down, right? They are just there. Look at the angle of repose of those alluvial cones. Okay, or these are called pediment now by geologists, for students of geology, right? They are coalescing fans, they are unconsolidated. If you have excess of snow, and if a glacier comes from left to right, because that's the slope, from right to left, that is the slope, it will bulldoze all of this material as moraine, right? In the background you can see the frost action that's caused that. Okay, freezing and thawing. Look at the jaggedness of the peaks superimposed on the fold. That is geomorphology, and geology is the fold, and disaster management is understanding the alluvial fan accumulation in the foreground. Okay, so three things over here: rock, structure, and accumulation of pediment, right? So this is what happens if it rains heavily over here. That material is going to go down as flash flood. Okay, if there is a glacier that accumulates and flows, it will take it as moraine and deposit it somewhere else, right? So if you got the message from this thing, is just to show you how these sediments accumulate, and they are accumulating for thousands of years, thousands. Okay, remember, India Tibet collision 65 million, so thousands is very small denomination. For millions of years they are accumulating over here, at least 10 million years, 15 million years, unspoilt beauty. Okay, in these alluvial fans. Similar fans will be on Mars and on Moon. Okay, simply by gravity and simply by freezing. In the nights they have extreme temperatures, and in the days they expand. So the rock expansion itself creates this material. You don't require another agent. Thermal coefficients of rocks, for example. Okay, if you want to raise the level of the lecture. Okay, and then of course, if the thrusting goes on, then of course you get recumbent folds like is shown on the top. Okay, you get a fold where the axis is horizontal, so that's a recumbent fold. Now this photo is from Darjeeling. This is from Sikkim, on the other side of Darjeeling. Okay, you can see what has happened to that fold. It's completely horizontal. Okay, and this is limestone. So I showed you the other one, that's basically shale core sandstone. So look at that material and look at what happens to the limestone. The limestone is now into a recumbent fold. Okay, so tectonics definitely is operating as we speak in the Himalayas. Now coming to the seismic zone, as I said, because of the subduction, the Himalayas, including the northeast, is completely seismically susceptible. Okay, they are in zone 5, very high risk zone. Okay, and intensities are 8, 9. Okay, the depth of the earthquakes are greater. Okay, so the seismic risk is greater, and all that seismicity can do is trigger landslides. Okay, and that's why they are become important. So the triggering mechanism is gravity itself, number one. Number two, it is the susceptibility of the rock to agents of erosion, ice, water. So rainfall comes into the play, precipitation of snow comes into the play, angle of repose is there. Okay, so the geomorphic expression of that point, and lastly the triggering mechanism. So triggering mechanisms could be seismic, could be simply rainfall. And the Himalayas are now, you can understand, threefold susceptibility the Himalayas have. They have elevations, they have triggering mechanisms, they have everything written for disaster. They have everything that is written for disasters. And so disasters are there to stay. We humans have to understand this point. When it comes to development, limestone, those limestones, do you want to make cement? Himachal was right in banning the mining in Mandi and other areas. Those limestones for cement, भाई कडप्पा में बहुत सारा है, अब उन्होंने कर लिया है, right? So the eco sensitive zones, okay, geologically sensitive zone, okay. So this needs to be, and unless we demand it, see, the politicians are part of us, okay. They are not different. So they are very watchful to see whether the public makes a hue and cry on every issue. If the public do not make a hue and cry, they are okay with it. Then they serve their own interest, because they are us, part of our society itself. So we must understand where to develop. Okay, remember Kachch. Madam said he was very much. I just came from Vigakot on the border with Pakistan just last week. Okay, quarantined and got my certification, and then back to Maharashtra. Okay, the last bastion was that 40 kilometers of area. Okay, and unfortunately that is going for solar and saltwater pans. That's not where you want to make salt. You can make salt on the 7,000 square kilometers of land available. But that is a paradigm. Unless I say it, and I know you're recording it, I'm not going to say what this development will cost. But that is later on, once we understand. If we understand, we will communicate. If we communicate, we will progress. Okay, otherwise we are just going to sit on the fence and watch the loot. Okay, and that's why I have taken this up, though I am not an expert. So here you have India, and now you have geographic entities and names over there. Kathmandu, Delhi. This I have taken from Bilham 2019, Geological Society of London, right? Jawaharlal Nehru, for example, Cambridge. Okay, geology. He studied the Bihar earthquake. He reported the Bihar earthquake. I seen original photographs of what he, and then I asked the person who was showing me the photograph, the head of the Cambridge University Earth Science Department. I said, how come he has taken such pertinent photographs? Then he said, you don't know that he was studying geology for his honors. And then I was shocked. So only a man could capture the Bihar earthquake so well only because he was trained to do so. Okay, and it's an amazing story, right? So this is the Himalayas, and you can see 5 centuries of rupture. 5 centuries of Himalayan rupture is shown in black. Okay, 17th century, 15th century, and the present day scenario, 2015. This was done for the Kathmandu earthquake. So later on, nothing has been added to this, right? And you can see Guwahati over there, for example, in Meghalaya, right? But you can see the Srinagar basin. So this is the 5 centuries of rupture, and of course the intensity. So I didn't speak about the intensity, right? On the right of this image, which I took from the internet, is the earthquake magnitude scale. So 8 is greatest. Okay, and we had one of the greatest in Kutch. I went to see that, Alaband, 18th century, 1826, if I'm not mistaken, India's greatest earthquake, where the run of Kutch was uplifted by 1 meter. Okay, I could not reach it completely, but I seen the displacement, which is amazing. Okay, that was supposed to be 8.6, right, in Kutch. But most of these are in the 7, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so you can see slight damage to building. Then by 7 it is strong, major drainages and other things get affected, and 7 and 8 is major earthquakes creating serious havoc. And anything then an 8.5 or 8, it becomes exponential. Remember that 8.2, 8.5 is a big difference than 8. Okay, So please remember that. And now you have the values over there in Kashmir, 7.8, 8.2, the intensity of earthquakes, right? You have that by two methods, of course, but you can see what happens over here in the central gap. Okay, that is in Gadwal, in Gadwal Himalaya. You can see Almora and of course central gap. That's where the earthquakes are major. 8.5, 8.58. Of course, you have Nahan and the Kangra Valley where it is 7.8 to 4. Kathmandu 7.8 until Everest 7.8. It's much more stable over there. Then in Kathmandu, the shock was last time, okay, and that was a huge one. And then, of course, you go on to Arunachal, Eastern Bhutan, and Sikkim. So this is what is the condition of the earthquakes and the rupturing of the Himalayas because of earthquake. Okay, so for those who want to study this further, please refer to Bill Ham 2008 Geological Society of London. The paper is freely available, so you can read it. Okay, and this is what happens with the intensity. Okay, this is also referred by many people. It's available freely on the internet. These are our cities that can get affected. That includes our cousins in Islamabad, Delhi, Bhutan, okay, and some parts of Burma, right, and Kathmandu. We should not forget Kathmandu. Okay, the Nepali people should believe that Indians will come to their rescue rather than Chinese. Okay, that doesn't sound good on this lecture, but that's the fact, because most of their roads are here, and we should understand what our neighbors require, because we share water with them. Okay, and any disruption on these matters will be of grave consequences to our ethos, number one, because we still believe that uh, that the Gangas is the holy river. Okay, it's a dying river. It's a sad tale of the Ganga, right? So you have these big settlements in high earthquake zones, and that's why we should be much more sensitive to it. Yes, we require development in the Himalayas, but it needs to be eco-sensitive, and I don't want to be sounding alarmist on that note, but we should be it. So coming to the, and this is all the basics that I want to do. This is creep, and you can see what happens. Creep is a very slow movement. Okay, and you can see what happens. The soil on the bedrock, remember the bedrock over here is dipping, but the soil on the bedrock moves, each particle. So especially this happens when there is permafrost, or there is alternating freezing of the soil and thawing of the soil. Okay, so this can be seasonal or this can be diurnal, daily, right? And so what happens, the particle is lifted up, and under the slope it falls down, so it moves, right? So it goes up down, but it moves. And so what happens, that the soil starts creeping. Okay, it can be this, the dry soil can creep, but the wet soil can creep faster. So what happens is, the agriculture, the fence, the poles, electric poles, they all tend, or even the trees, they tend to bend in the direction of the movement of the, that is the first telltale signature. All telephone poles, all electric pole leaning in one direction, that means there is creep. Trees, the trunks, because the trunks are growing, okay, so they are straight and then they start bending upward. The fences get disrupted, right? The roads, besides these creep areas, they start getting tension fractures, okay, or the retaining walls on the roads, they start getting bulges. Okay, and so that is creep. Okay, you must know that the earth is moving, it's very slow, but over the years it will be very perceptible, right? This is the first telltale signature. Of course, rock falls, they are instantaneous. Okay, and as you go from Dehradun to say Masuri, you can see many of the large limestone blocks falling on the road. Okay, there is only one road to go up and come down. Okay, and therefore traffic is stopped after 7 on this road, simply because there is rock fall, sudden dislodgement, and most of them are assisted by undercutting for our roads or in sea cliffs as is shown in the cartoon, right? So undercutting creates this dislodgement of blocks, huge blocks. So this is called rockfall. Then of course rock slides, which are common even in the Western Ghats. We find that the dry rock blocks simply fall, okay, and all of this is because there is undercutting either by the stream, by the wave action, or by human induced roads, for example. These cause rock slides, okay, simply slide down. They don't topple or they don't fall, okay, as in rock falls. They have a slide surface, and we aggravate that situation by building roads, for example, which are essential, of course, right? Then slumps. What are slumps? Slumps are movement of soil or sediments, okay. These are huge, they can be huge in the Himalayas, they can be huge, right? So they simply slump down a slope, so they have surfaces by which it is activated. These are all from the internet, I don't want to deal with this. We have already consumed a lot of time on this. Flows, okay. So we can have earth flows, that means slow moving dry material, okay, with rocks and boulders, they are called debris by some people. Mud flows, fully consisting of clay and mud, they can be dry or wet. And of course in volcanic terrains such as in Japan or Philippines, the volcanic ash falls, okay, and as the ash is falling, the snow melts and water ash, say around 800 to 900 degrees hot ash flows, okay, superheated water, and they form lahars, but that is not a part of the Himalayas, okay. So we will quickly grow to this thing. We have crown, we have the main scarp, we have the head, and we have the toe, okay. So they have just like humans have body parts, landslides have body parts, especially slumps, mud flows, and other things. So we quickly go. This is So Morari in Ladakh, and you can see the snow falls seasonally, and subsequently in the summer the snow thaws, and this is what happens. So what type of mass movement? You can see that this is creep, okay. All of the debris created by weathering on the surface of these hill slopes. Remember, the hill slope is gentle, okay. You have this big huge hammock in which there are lobes of material that are moving in different directions, okay. So this is creep, this is on the way to Somorari Lake, okay. So you can see it, except that it is better seen when it is snowing, okay. So when it is not snowing or if there is no snow, you will not be able to perceive this. But as you go from Sumdo to Somorari, on the right side there is a huge mountain that you go, you can see this mud, basically the creep, okay, and huge lobes of them, okay. Then we come to the disaster that we have noticed in 2013. I'm coming to Himachal and Uttarakhand. We'll start with Uttarakhand, and you can see what people are doing. This is taken from the internet from one of the reports. You can see the river raging. It is cutting the toe of this road, and then you get this arcuate fractures on the road in the crown area. Here of course you have an escarpment, there is no head and there is no toe because the river has carried it away, okay. And just watch the people standing on the crown. So this is disaster to happen. Even if you can save yourself from this lecture, this is going to go, okay. It's a matter of time or seconds, okay. So stay away from such places. This is what happened in 2013. We have all been witness to it, and we forgot quite conveniently, okay. All of the king's men and the Indian army could not put Humpty Dumpty together again, okay. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the fact. These are the gross images that we seen. Rainfall plus landslides in 2013. Badrinath, this is going to happen. Look at the angle of repose on that background, Okay, this is close to Badrinath. We have a big settlement, and you have debris on the slopes. This is waiting to happen. I will go quick. I found a photo of Kedarnath, and don't forget the Kedarnath incident. You can see in the old photograph, I'm told it is 18th century. It was on the net. I have no means to verify it, but it looks quite old. You can see that the glacier from the slopes has deposited terminal moraine. If it is really early 19th century, I'll accept it. In the foreground, you have the temple. In the mid-ground, you have this terminal moraine accumulated from the glaciers. And on that fateful day, only this large blocks such as this on the right side of the temple, just behind the temple, they are called erratics. It was probably brought down by ice some centuries ago, before the temple was built, and someone had the inspiration to build the temple just behind this block, and that is what saved the the temple rather. Okay, you can still see the debris of the lake outburst. There was a lake behind this moraine, and that outburst, you can see the channel through which the outburst came in the last photograph. Okay, that is what happens. Okay, so you have terminal moraines accumulating until they can take no more, and if there is incessant rains, or if there is a lake that is behind the terminal moraine developing, we could have just drained it. Are we draining it today? What are we doing? We have done nothing. People died over there simply because geologists like me did not communicate. Even now it's a ticking. You can see the other side of the moraine is intact. It may be accumulating. Okay, so this is the cause of terminal lake outburst in Kedarnath was responsible for the Kerala disaster. People died. And what was the telltale signatures? Migrating springs like this. Okay, this is my own photograph. I took it. Okay, 3 days I was there. I was at Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology doing my course in disaster management over there using remote sensing and GIS. They have certificate courses, and they have PG diplomas, and they have MSc Tech. So since I was from the state government, I couldn't stay long, but I can show you photos before the disaster. Uh, these springs kept shifting 3-4 months before the main disasters. It was way before the main disaster, many years before the main disaster. So shifting springs like these are the telltale signatures that mass movement is happening. Same 2013 event, debris flow. Okay, you classify. This is the road going to Badrinath. That means going to Manna on the Indo-Chinese border. The Border Road Organization maintains and operates these roads. What is this? Simply debris accumulated, and the road is simply leveled out and continued. This is disaster waiting to happen. This photograph is 10 years old. That means it's waiting to happen. Overhang, debris. All that it requires is probably 200 millimeters of rainfall in an hour. That is also too big. It's a big ask. I think so. Half of that rainfall, this will desire. This is what happens. If there is bare rock at the bottom, and if water accumulates and seeps at the rock debris interface, then you find that there is a landslide. Okay, so you have this landslide scar with the debris. Okay, this is again on the Badrinath road. Again, small glacial lakes like this. The landslides, because of road cutting, toe cutting in the background, and foreground there are other landslides along the road, and then they form these small lakes. Okay, like this. So the road is gone. Okay, you can see the landslide coming from the left, blocking the the river. Okay, I look at the gradient at the back, steep, very steep gradient, and then the debris simply accumulates there. The road is gone. The border road organization has already cut into the rock to create another road on the right, and the debris is left there. Next time, this is what moves. Tourism, Masuri, there is no need to say. On the right side, you can see mining, Masuri phosphorite. That released all of the coarse sediments. The rivers are choked. They are undercutting the embankments that were built for water conservation. This is disaster waiting to happen. Himachal Pradesh, angle of repose, material. The black is the Cambrian shale, so fine material, right? Alternating with the coarse limestones. Okay, this is the kind of disaster that we create by creating roads. Okay, and roads on unscientific basis. Okay, so you can see what is this. This is a debris flow or a slump, you classify. Okay, so so these are the photos that are so vivid and huge. Imagine those rock boulders falling. Okay, so we have competent beds, we have limestone blocks below, above, and we have shale at the bottom. That is itself instability for these landslides. And rainfall and road and these activities create the triggering mechanism. Crest, many places. So I won't take toe undercutting. This is what happens. This is a mud flow that you have. The stream has cut the toe of the slope, and look at the angle of repose, 45. You can also see a small stream emerging there, white line in the middle of that scar. Okay, so the stream simply emerges and the whole thing comes down then because of toe undercutting. Sikkim. Okay, I won't deal with this because we have no time now. Okay, sorry. Darjeeling Kalimpong Road. I'm sorry, there's a drag. Yeah, so this is what happens. This is the Lachin River. You can see the snow-clad mountains in the background. It's bad weather, so bad photograph, but you can see the scar. Okay, the relative relief is around 1000 meters. So the slip surface, the crown and the toe are separated by 1000 meters of elevation. Imagine what will happen to people in the downstream. The acceleration due to gravity. Okay, and one is happening, is going to be triggered maybe in the coming monsoon. Okay, you can see the scar in the foreground. It's cracked open because this, but because this Lachin River has not cut the toe, the slopes in the foreground right corner are stable. The moment they undercut, that scar will open up and there will be a landslide. And think about the villages at the bottom of in the river valley. So Sikkim is another problem area. These are the Lachin landslides. Okay, very famous. Okay, thousand meters of landslides. Same with Darjeeling. This is on the Gangtok. I'm sorry for that. Gangtok Natula Road. Okay, where the Indian Army is sitting. You can find that the hill slides are having great higher angles of repose, and the rocks here are from the central crystallines. Okay, as I will show you later on. But these are the scars. 2000 meters of area, multiple landslides. Okay, you can go to the GSI portal and see all of these. They are documented, well documented. Okay, these are the disasters. The rock is very competent, such as this garnetiferous gneiss. Okay, but the angle of repose is very high and the susceptibility is close to the main crystalline thrust, and therefore you get these landslides repeatedly. Okay, Lastly, the Tapovan, which I think so I will finish in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and then I do not know, we are up to 9. So we are running late, okay? I'm sorry for that. So Tapovan is a classical example. Okay, the area that I have circled, you can see the Tapovan on the left, and then you can see the stream. The circle that I have put is the slope, which has lost all of the ice, the present day slope. Okay, and that's the area that is caused the disastrous um, incident lately. Okay, so that area we can zoom in. So that's the cirque, the Nanda Guti Trishul. Trishul is just off this image onto the right corner, right? So this is Nanda Guti. So you can see that the glacier has now retreated towards the top, and of course the slope is barren. If you go to Google Earth, from where I have taken this image, then 2000, sorry, around 2000, this was all snow covered. I have visited this area. And Chamoli is just to the left. Uh, so I have visited this area, but my roles were not very developed very well. They are also on mat. So I'm using the Google Earth images. So all of this slope in the foreground, and of course in the cirque, that watershed, that glacial shed was full of snow. Okay, and see the angle of repose, it's very very steep. So all of that thawed. Okay, all of the snow that was accumulated on that thawed. The ground, there is no problem, melt water will be simply carried away, but there is permafrost on the ground. And please remember, because of that frost action, you find a lot of accumulation of sediments. You can see here the glacier still melting with a lot of crevasses on top over there, and the slope is very thin ice. Okay, now on the peaks. And you can see another image over here of course the Trishul peak. Okay, so there is a gradient, and all of that red that you can see there, reddish area, is basically tillite and dimictite accumulated over the years. Okay, and that tillite and um, basically dimictite suddenly slipped because the ground thawed and was carried by that meltwater. Okay, and that's the reason why we got the, so it is not a lake outburst phenomenon, uh, as was previously shown on some TV channels and other things. It's simply that reworking and remobilization of pre-existing debris, especially dimictite and tillite, like a flash flood. That was the reason why such an incident occurred. Okay, and it was small, and of course it died once it came down to other dams, artificial dams. So it was accommodated by that. Okay, so people who build dams can say that we control such events, extreme events. So remedial measures, all of you know and all of you think, but there are only two remedial measures. Engineering measures are done by many organization, border roads, and many uh, public work departments and other things. But what is important is managing water, which they never do. Okay, even in the Western Ghats, dewatering of these slopes is the most important. So simple putting pipes on the slopes and removing water or trenching the movement of water, because water acts as a lubricant, it also adds to the load of the slope. Okay, so the center of gravity shifts. It is that simple. And therefore civil engineering can be disastrous sometimes. If you do too much of high density rock bolting or chains, then actually you shatter the rock itself, and once the bolts weather, that whole slope comes down. So people are not paying attention to the dewatering of these slopes, right? Dewatering of the slopes is very important. in these cases. And lastly, I wanted to speak about this, but there is no time. You can, I will send madam a link that CDAC has made. I'm associated with this project just peripherally, but I would like to speak about it for a minute. It is the that we have already developed system of glacial of GLOF, which is glacial lake outburst flow. Okay, and CDAC is the nodal agency for this. They have already done it for the Teesta River. Okay, so they are monitoring water levels. It comes telemetrically from this glacial lake that is there, which is supposed to be going to break and burst. So CDAC has installed, CDAC Trivandrum developed the sensors, and they have installed this water recording machine over there. Okay, it is suspended on a string, steel wire, and it sends every minute, it sends 3 readings of the water level of that lake. So, and then they have integrated it with the digital elevation models, and of course then they have this mobile based early warning system. Please remember, Teesta flows into Bangladesh, so it will be disastrous. So this is a good incorporation, right? And therefore I will send you the link. I'll send madam the link and she can share it. You can see this GLOF project that is done. Similar such GLOF projects should be implemented throughout the Himalayas. It is made in India. It has all of the connotations that we should take pride in. Okay, and we are using supercomputers. CDAC is using supercomputers to give you early warning, flood, and cloud outburst, this thing. So data is problematic in the Himalayas. We don't have many hydrometeorological stations, no gauging stations, right? No climate stations. Okay, that is another problem that is standing. But we have demonstrated projects that need to be implemented across the Himalayas. Okay, and this is the GLOF project. Remember, CDAC is basically a Department of Telecommunication organization. It's at the cutting edge technology and computing, and therefore such early warning system for glacial lake outburst, of course it requires data, and data is not forthcoming. Okay, so the army can also have hydrometeorological stations for such civilian purposes, and it can be integrated into early warning systems. Okay, just like we have done for tsunamis and cyclones along the east coast of India. Remember, we had 3 cyclones, and hats off to these governments, state governments, and central governments, of course, who have solved the early warning system. Okay, these are not in place for the Americas, but the West Coast mobilization of millions of people, or at least lakhs of people, because of the early warning for cyclone, and for we are now, CDAC is working on the Hirakud, sorry, Mahanadi basin for early flood warning systems. So it can be integrated, and also it can be, so many of you students who want to, from especially from geological background or GIS background, who want to work with CDAC, please contact me or CDAC directly. You can get small projects on this uh, during your BSc as well as MSc. Okay, so we are working actively, Pune University and CDAC, because they are Pune based organizations. They are working. We would like to have more students involved in it, and having dissertations integrated on that. Okay, or even your summer internship. Okay, so please be free and ask. And lastly, the old time tested way. Okay, grow more trees. Okay, Chipko Andolan. Many youngsters do not know, okay, about this is Sundarlal Bahuguna and his wife, and they saved millions of trees in the Himalayas by their Chipko Andolan. Okay, and it is very important for us to revisit all of these beautiful stories from the Himalayas. Okay, so trees anchor rocks and soil, and so I thought this was a befitting last slide. Thank you very much, and sorry for the inadequacies and not keeping to the time.
It was
Thank you very much.
very good. And this much time was required. We should have kept it for 2 hours. Our mistake.
No, ma'am. It's okay, ma'am. I mean,
Thank
I
you so much. I think you have given so much to the audience, and we will continue with learning more about geology, because that is very important when you talk about climate change, when you talk about the biodiversity, when you talk about better future for our planet and even our country, even
Even our country, exactly. Yeah.
at micro level also. So this is the best way to understand our earth, and we will continue learning from Dr. Duraiswami. Very
Mm,
soon, he will be giving us a new course in the month of March. We will be sending you the details of it. And we both together, I mean, we have been doing that, but Dr. Duraiswami has joined hands with us now. We plan to have an exhibition, geology and archaeology exhibition very soon. We used to do that when we were in the university. I was in the university, and well, we want to restart it because somehow the university has not been able to do it because of all its problems. But we as an organization can definitely do it. And with Savitribai Phule University's
yes,
geology
ma'am.
department with us, we can definitely go ahead with it.
Yes,
So
sure, ma'am.
uh, that is the thing which we want to plan it in the month of November or December. Let's see how much we can do.
Yes, ma'am.
And before we call it a day, I want to request all of you. We have just in the previous lecture, I have made well, an exhortation to you. Please donate to Instrucent. We have been doing so many things. We have been giving free lectures also, and we want to do so many other things like conferences and exhibitions and projects. So if you feel like the month of March is approaching, it's a giving month, I would say. To save your income tax, we can help you. We have the ATG exemption, and your donations will be, you will get the receipt with everything, our PAN card numbers and our ATG numbers, and you will benefit from it. So if you find institution work is good enough, please donate. Thank you very much. With that, I think we should say thank you once again to Dr. Duraiswami. There are questions, I think. Um, Technical lecture, but interesting. Now I see that sometimes some events can be predicted. Yes, okay. That's not much of a question. These are compliments, and Dr. Sarvamangala is also complimenting you. So
Thank
thank
you, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, this is just to stimulate your thought process, okay, in landslide. But I think so. For the students, we could also volunteer to have GIS remote sensing sessions, and of course, hands-on through the institution network. You can have courses on digital image processing,
Let's
and yeah, yeah,
uh,
definitely, we'll be
thank you
happy to
also again
contribute.
compliment you.
Yes, ma'am.
As a humanities student, such lectures are very helpful to understand these things. Thank you. Purushottam Verlekar says, thank you, sir, for this very informative lecture. So lots
Uh,
of things will be coming to mind, everybody's mind. And I thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Dr. Durai.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night. Thank you.